What's up, Bucs Squad? I'm your host, Jaron Spor. I'm going to tell you why the Bucs got some massive news earlier today.
I'm Marcus Ray, Michigan All-American, and I'll tell you which game really I'm looking forward to seeing this weekend.
I'm James Yarcho. I'm going to tell you why Baker needs to sling it on Sunday.
Hey, Tampa Bay, it's the Buccaneers squad. Everything Tampa Bay Buccaneers every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of the Sunshine State, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. With a touch of the Buccaneer way, the Buccaneer Squad Show starts now.
What's up, Bucs Squad? Real quick, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Like I said, I'm your host, Jaron. We got a packed show for you today. We got to preview the Bucs and the Saints. We got an injury report. We're going to go around the NFL, look at some games that there's a lot of significance to, and then we'll give our score predictions to wrap up the show. But first, let's start with the Bucs and the Saints. Needless to say, it's a must-win, especially after what the Panthers just did on Sunday. But it's also a game you just cannot afford to lose. You cannot lose to a team that has only 2 wins this season. It's a team that you dominated on the road earlier this season. And it's also a game I think the defense has a chance to get some confidence back.
I think
go ahead, Marcus. I'm sorry.
No, James, please go first.
I was just going to say, I agree wholeheartedly with your point about the defense. You know, that was a game where the defense won that for the Bucs. The offense didn't look great. You know, that was one of those games where Baker had kind of started on his down tick, where he was not playing his best football. And it was Anthony Nelson, it was Antoine Winfield Jr. having 2 touchdowns taken away from him. And that game is what kickstarted the Tyler Shuck era for the New Orleans Saints. So this is a team that the Bucs should be able to really dominate on the defensive side of the ball. And that's something that the defense desperately needs. You have a lot of guys that are not playing their best ball right now. Zion McCollum is looking rough right now, but you saw the difference in how that pass rush was able to get after Jacoby Brissett just from the addition of Hassan Reddick. That entire front 4, front 6, whatever you want to call it, it looked completely different with Reddick on the field, because that's a player the Cardinals had to account for. That is something that is certainly going to play into the strengths of the Bucs in this one.
I think really this is a game that the Bucs need, because they lost 3 in a row, but at the same time they came out last week against Arizona and they did what they had to do. Bucky looked good. They spreaded the football around. Obviously, Chris was out there, and Emeka still is going to be probably their number 1 guy. And I just feel like the schedule is softening up at the right time for the Bucs. There's not a lot of teams that can lose 3 in a row and still be in first place in their division. And now, obviously, those 2 Carolina games are going to matter tremendously. But for the Saints, I mean, they're just a team that just can't get it done. And so when you really look at them, they're dangerous, though. They're 300 total yards. Quarterback didn't play too bad. And so when you look up, you just don't want to lose a game like this, because it's a gimme game, but it's still the NFL. And so you have to show up, you have to play, you have to prepare. But at the same time, if you get clipped by the Saints at home because they're completely in spoiler mode, then you have to start to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, are you for real or are you not?
Yeah, and we talk about Carolina. That's a team we think is playing really good football, and New Orleans beat them just a few weeks back. So it's a team that definitely can be dangerous. Again, and we talk about it every game, but the key is turnovers. I mean, it really is. There's only been 2 games this year that the Saints have not turned the football over. Obviously, they had 4 against the Bucs in the first meeting, and they also had 4 against Chicago. But it was against the Giants in Week 5 they didn't turn it over, and then the Cardinals in Week 1. So every week since then, they've turned the ball over. Now, on the flip side, there's only been 3 games that the defense hasn't forced a turnover. And that was against the Cardinals, the Patriots, and the Rams. They had a game against the Giants that they won where they forced 5 turnovers. So it's going to come down to that in this game. As long as the Bucs take care of the football, I think they're going to win and win pretty handedly. And honestly, I want to see the offense, which I thought it looked pretty. It was kind of a weird game because I thought it looked better than what the stats and the numbers actually showed against Arizona. But I would like to see them kind of get their groove back because, again, against the Saints, that was the first time this year really that the offense didn't play well. And it's weird because they won 23-3. But remember, they had like 7 plays from inside the 1, and they couldn't punch it in. And they finally did on the 8th play. And they kind of looked out of sorts a little bit, maybe overlooked New Orleans in that one. And so I'd like to see them now with Bucky back to kind of get their rhythm also.
Yeah, and that's one of the big I'm looking towards for this game. I mentioned at the top, I want to see Baker sling the ball in this one. You're talking about a defense that is 25th in the NFL in completion percentage allowed. They're 25th in passing yards allowed. They're 25th in passer rating allowed. This is a team that you can dominate through the air. And you go back to that Cardinals game, we're talking about a couple of bad drops from Baker really having an explosive game. You had Chris Godwin with an uncharacteristic drop in the end zone that would have really topped off what a great day that he had. You had on that opening drive, Emeka Egbuka drops a 3rd down pass that hit him square in the hands. And I love Egbuka, and I think he's going to be one of the best receivers in the NFL as he continues to get more experience, but he's got a bad case of the drops as of late. You take a look at his targets and his reception percentage, and a lot of those targets weren't really catchable. Baker wasn't giving him the best opportunities. Last couple of weeks, Baker's given him some great opportunities, and these balls are hitting him in the hand, and he's just dropping them. So that's got to be cleaned up. I think that's something that is going to continue to improve once they get more of these weapons back, which, Jaron, I'm sure you were alluding to at the top of the show. But this is a Saints defense where the Bucs can come out there and just really establish dominance through the air. And having Bucky in the backfield adds that ability because you have that threat of him back there. It's Sean Tucker was great, Rashad White was great, but Bucky adds a different element, and just the fear of him being able to run the ball and get those explosives means that defense is already going to be looking for Bucky to get the ball, and that's when Baker can really take advantage.
Well, I also think, not only does Baker need to sling it, though, James, the Saints gave up 164 rushing yards to the Dolphins. And so I really think this is a week that if Tampa can establish the run, with Bucky, he had 17 carries the last game. But if you can get him up closer to 21 carries, I think obviously his shoulder is all right. He took a pounding, but he's still, he's healthy now. I think this is a game that the offensive line needs to find a way to figure out who they are moving forward in December, both in pass protection and in the run game. And then I just think defensively, Todd Bowles and those guys look like they were bend but don't break, because I really thought Jacoby Brissett dialed them up. A lot of quick game stuff early on, and then they had the 2 turnovers. But also, like that first one, when Winfield got that interception, I just felt like Brissett forced the ball to Mike. And then like it was a thing to where they had a lot of passing yards. So I think any team that wins a championship or gets close to it, they run the ball, they stop the run, and they don't give up big plays, and they turn it over. I just think the Bucs got lucky a couple of times Sunday in the 3-point win, but you can't allow the Saints to do what Arizona did, because Arizona might not turn it over when they get down there. Like they may punch it in or get 2 field goals out of those 2 turnover possessions. To your point, Jaron, it's like the way that they dialed them up was concerning. And also, I think the tackling for me, I think tackling in the NFL, it's almost like watching NBA playoffs. You almost say they don't play hard into the playoffs. So like when you look at the tackling and the missed tackles, that's very alarming for me. And it stood out in this last game. But I just think they don't I'd like to see the Bucs step it up on defense a little more because Brissett really didn't play a bad game. He was like 29 of 40, which is not bad, and they only lost by 3 points.
Yeah, for sure. And I also was looking back at that Bucs Saints game. Obviously, Bucky doesn't play in that game. It was Sean Tucker and Rachaad White who carried the load. Emeka played, but if I remember correctly, that was one of those games right after his hamstring injury that he kind of had to play because they didn't have many receivers out there, and you could kind of tell that he was still kind of hampered. Godwin didn't play in that game. Obviously, Mike Evans didn't play in that game. I thought, Godwin had the drop in the end zone, but I thought he looked pretty good actually on Sunday, better than I thought he would look, based off of what we've seen so far this season. So maybe he's starting to round into shape, which would be awesome for the offense. And then, as I mentioned, Bucky being there for this game as well. I'd like to see them use more of Sean Tucker and Rachaad White, even though Bucky's back. We talked about that on Sunday, that even though Bucky was back, Sean Tucker and Rachaad White did not have much of a hand in the run game at all, despite them playing really good, even in the 3-game losing streak. So I'd like to see them kind of use all three of them, and maybe even use some 2 back sets would be kind of fun with either Sean and Bucky, or Bucky and Rachaad, or something like that. But yeah, those are some things that I'm kind of looking forward to in this game, or at least hoping that the offense can put up a 30 ball, like do something like that, like show that you're starting to round into form right before the playoffs.
Yeah, I would like to see more of that pony package with Bucky and Rachaad. I think the Arizona game was more of getting a feel for what Bucky could handle. If you remember, Rachaad was the one that started that game. It wasn't Bucky out there on the first drive. And even though a lot of us would like to see Sean Tucker sprinkled in a little bit more, it may not happen because Bucky showed that he can handle, his regular workload. He can handle, everything that he needs to do. And if Sean Tucker's getting carries, it's because Bucky's on the sideline, not because Rachaad is on the sideline. So, it's unfortunate that Tucker's carries are about to drop off significantly, barring an injury, which certainly don't need any more of those. Right. But the Bucs had a lot of success with that pony package last year because you would have 2 running backs in the backfield that can both run the ball, they can both catch the ball, they can both pick up the blitz. So defenses don't really know what they're going to do, which one's going to be sneaking out, which one's going to be getting the ball. And I think that is something that Grizz is going to start to implement a little bit more moving forward. But I wasn't really surprised that they didn't do it against Arizona, just because you needed to allow Bucky to start to get a feel for the game again before you start mixing that kind of stuff in.
Well, the other thing that Grizz did too, he went a lot of 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends. And so I think he coached to win the game. And I do think that they gave Bucky a chance to get reacclimated, after missing several games. And so I just think, what Baker did with his legs made the difference in the first half too. Like when your quarterback can improvise and scramble and just do stuff. And I just think for him playing injured still, probably he was very successful, and then gave that offense an injection of energy, if you will. And then like defensively, when you look at the pass rush, those guys, when you talk about Yaya and Vita Vea, those guys creating turnovers, that's huge. The Bucs are going to need everybody. And I'm telling you guys, moving forward, they're going to pick on Zion from here on out. Mm-hmm. I mean, Arizona walked out there and their first 2-3 passes were right at 27. So it's no secret that people believe that he's somebody that they can have success against. But also, I think with Dean coming back, he's just a turnover machine. He's a guy that just has a knack for just being in the right place at the right time. And if you guys remember, he was the guy that actually should have had the interception when it got deflected when Winfield picked it off. So I just think the Bucs defensively need to step it up, like they did against the Saints the first time. Obviously, that game wasn't pretty offensively, and the defense stepped up and won the game when we first started this show. So we'll see, man.
And Marcus, I know we're almost out of time on this segment, but just a question. We talked about Zion and he's really struggling, but with all the injuries and stuff, you're going to keep seeing him out there. How do you hide him defensively without really weakening your defensive secondary?
Well, you almost have to play zone. The NFL is cut like this. They play man to man, so there aren't any scholarships, and so the way the NFL treats this thing is play man. If he can't guard him, then you cut him. You play man. Everybody plays man. They want to play man. They want to rush 4, drop 7, play man. But you almost can't hide Zion unless you play zone, whether he's a cover 2 corner where he just sits in the flats and just sits underneath. But anything that's deep, cover 3, cover 4, anything where he has a deep responsibility, you almost can't hide him, because if a receiver goes vertical, it's man-to-man anyways. So I just think that you just can't hide him, and he's struggling. I know he got a contract. He's doing his business, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but I think he's the Achilles heel to that defense right now.
Yeah, for sure. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about the injury report. Could 2 potentially receivers be coming back? We'll talk about that coming up next. All right, well, NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum, swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. I just looked at right now the Saints and the Bucs game. 8.5-point favorite is the Bucs. Minus 500 on the money line. 42.5 is the over/under. So there's some bets that you could throw out there. But player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. Keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, Bucs Squad, we're back with another segment. We're going to talk about the injury report. Just wanted to point out the Bucs Squad show, for those that are new to this doesn't take anything away from what James does. He still does his daily stuff, does his post-game stuff. It's just more content for you. We do it twice a week, usually right after the game, and then typically on Tuesday nights, although we have done a Monday night. So check us out live. But all right, let's dive into the injury report, because Todd Bowles broke some news. Well, first off, we can talk about Jalen McMillan, because on the newscast, on the cast, the game cast, they talked about him possibly being able to practice this week, and then Todd Bowles drops the news that Mike Evans might actually get activated and able to practice this week. Neither guy will play this week, it doesn't look like, but they will at least be able to start practice and for them open up their 21-day window, which is obviously massive news for the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I definitely don't expect either of these guys to play against the Saints. And in fact, I'm going to dive more into this, later this week on the regular show. But to touch on it here, I would expect Mike Evans to be back before Jalen McMillan. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Mike Evans plays Thursday night against the Falcons after this Saints game. For Jalen McMillan, I think it's more of a mental hurdle than anything else. You take a look at the type of injury that he suffered, the way he suffered it, and the climb that he has back. Mike doesn't really have to go through as much to get back into football shape. He's been in football shape, so it's about getting his legs under him, getting his conditioning going. For McMillan, he's been out since August. It's going to take him a while to ramp up, but then is it going to change the way he plays football? Is he going to be less aggressive as a receiver? Is he not going to go up for those passes that just are a little too high? Is he not going to, go over the middle and be as aggressive on those passes because he's afraid of taking a shot? There is a mental aspect to this with the severity of the injury that he suffered, because whether it's conscious or subconscious, that was an injury that could have potentially changed his life forever. We're talking about how lucky he is to still be up and moving and walking. So I think there is that aspect of this that not enough people are talking about. We're excited to see him back on the field, but what kind of player will he be when he does return?
Yeah, and I think like you got to think long term here if you're trying to win a championship. And I'm talking about January football. So like J-Mac coming back from a neck is like he can practice. I guarantee you there won't be any contact there. And then we talk about Mike, he's not going to have any contact either. I mean, a collarbone is a lot different than a neck injury. So I think both of those guys will be playing in January. And I think if Tampa Bay can take care of business, stay in first place, I would expect to see both those guys in the first Carolina game, because it like could be a game that determines if you win the division or not. And understand this, in the NFL, when you have an injury, those guys expect you to still play because you're being paid. Like long time ago, I got injured against the Kansas City Chiefs. Hurt my ankle in the first punt. Tamarick Vanover ran it back right exactly where I was supposed to be. And I remember getting a cortisone shot. But I told Eric Turner, he was my mentor, may he rest in peace. And I said, E.T., I can't go. And he said, you have to go. And I said, well, what do you mean? And I was a rookie, guys. And then he said, let them tell you that you can't go. Take your shot, get taped, warm up. They'll tell you if you can go or not. So I think this is going to come down to those two receivers not being in my situation, but they're going to be in a situation to where the Bucs are going to need them to play when it matters before this thing is all said and done. And I think we're looking at late December. And I think the Bucs will be just fine because they got Chris back. Emeka's playing well. Bucky's back. Baker's playing through injury. I just think that offensively, they don't want those guys out there with those two types of injuries. When you think about a collarbone right here, and you think about a neck, you don't want to lose those guys even for the future. So you have to understand that this is bigger than just one or two games.
Go ahead, James.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with everything that Marcus just said. And I personally think that the Carolina game might be a little optimistic for McMillan. I kind of circled Miami there for McMillan's return. And I feel like if you get Evans against Atlanta, that gives the Bucs 2 games to reintegrate Evans into the fold. Once that's done, now you get 2 more games where you're reintegrating McMillan to the point that, okay, now all of these guys have had a little bit of time in this offense now right before we hit January, and that's really when they're going to be able to hit their stride. But I also wonder, once McMillan is back, how much playing time is he really going to get? Like, we know what he did at the end of last year, and he was on an absolute tear, tied Jamar Chase for the most touchdowns in the NFL over, I think it was like the last 5 or 6 weeks. But Tez Johnson has been outstanding. So, who's going to be the odd man out there? We talked about Sean Tucker being the odd man out as far as running back is concerned. Who's going to be the odd man out at receiver when you have Mike, who's back? You have Godwin. If he can build off of what was a confidence booster of a game against Arizona. You have Ibuka. Now, is Tez going to be sidelined? Is it going to be kind of a, we do a little bit of Tez here, a little bit of McMillan there. They're really not going to see the field at the same time, on any of these snaps, unless Ibuka or Evans needs a breather because they just ran a go route.
Yeah, sorry to throw that to you. I was responding to a YouTube comment, James. But no, I mean, you're right. I'm curious about Tez Johnson, and not just Tez, just overall who is the odd man out. Because you felt like, at least early on, that it was going to be Tez, especially because Baker's history was Sterling and things like that. But I feel like Tez has almost outplayed Sterling, and that's not really, I don't think, a hot take. So do you put him in? He's obviously younger, but then on the flip side, Sterling's is that veteran presence that you want in that room. It's going to be interesting to see how they do that. And then, as both of y'all mentioned with McMillan, I think it's going to be a mental thing for him, because how many times we see guys come back from an injury and now, if it's a knee injury, they're afraid to plant or they're afraid to jump or they're, stuff like that. I remember I had a significant knee injury playing basketball, and the first time I went out to play basketball, like I was like walking the court because I was so afraid that if I took off and ran or if I jumped or something, like it was going to go again. Even though I had been jumping and doing all that during physical therapy, being on the actual court was just like a total different mental thing for you. And I'm sure that's the same way when it comes to the NFL. I am curious to see what kind of player comes back. But as y'all also mentioned, it's about his career. And so if he is still struggling with that kind of mentally, no reason to throw him out into a game this year if you need to just make sure he's ready for his future. But no, the Evans news was definitely a pleasant surprise. It was one of those things that when it happened, we kind of circled a date that he could possibly come back. And for that date to almost be here is just crazy to think about. But it was good seeing him on the sidelines. They kind of highlighted him in this last game. And as James mentioned, he is in football shape. Now he's going to have to get back up to running and stuff like that, which he's probably already doing some of that. But he looked like he was in pretty good shape.
Well, like for J-Mac, you really don't need him to come back, I think.
Right.
And then, he's your future. And you talk about a neck injury, and that's something you don't even want to play with at all. But when you talk about Mike, I think Mike brings a field generalship to this offense from a confidence standpoint. And, obviously he's not going to continue his streak with 1,000 yards. But at the same time, it's like, a guy that's that dominant, that talented, if he's on the field, he's going to command a lot of respect. And, I tip my cap to Tez and to Shepard for filling in and being the consummate NFL backups that you want when your stars aren't there. But a fully loaded Bucs, when you look at, even if Mike isn't Mike completely, but he can still take a hit, I think he's a guy that's going to cause problems for defenses. I think Tez has shown you that he can be as good as you need him to be when his number is called. I hate to see Chris drop that touchdown pass because, I followed Chris ever since he was in high school and Penn State, the whole deal, when I was on another network. And I was like, this guy is pretty talented too. And, when you saw him catch a little 5-yard hitch and then take it up the seam for 30 yards or whatever it was, it's like this offense can be extremely special if Grizz can figure it out. And I really think Grizz was trying to get everyone their touches and win the game. NFL is about touches. You can go back as far as you want. And when you have great players, all they want is the ball. And so I think like if Mike can come back and be a presence when it matters, and then Tez is still just carving people up from time to time. Even a guy like Sean Tucker, if he can get a couple more touches, to spare Bucky. Because you want Bucky in the NFC Championship. You don't want Tucker.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And like Rashad White, like he's talented too, and he did his thing. So I guess what I'm saying is the Bucs need everybody, and they have to find a way to like feed all of these guys and win, keep the locker room under control, and make sure that they're all on the same page.
Well, and I just looked it up. Let's say, hypothetically, Mike Evans is back for that Thursday game against the Falcons. That gives him 4 games. He would need 215 yards per game over that span to still hit 1,000. The NFL record for the most receiving yards over a 4-game span is 774, set by Josh Gordon. How's that for a name we haven't heard in a long, long time? But optimistically, for those of us that are still hoping against hope that maybe something happens, we all remember what Mike Evans did to the Panthers, just a couple of years ago when he had a hat trick and he went for, over, I think it was almost 200 yards, might have been over 200 yards. So having them on the schedule twice, I don't know. Crazier things have happened. Obviously, it's probably not going to happen, but it is something to keep in the back of your mind. And Marcus, you bring up a great point too. If McMillan is back in the fold, if Mike Evans is back in the fold, I didn't even think about, Sterling Shepard also being an odd man out there. And he's been, he's been clutch at times for this Buccaneers offense, and you still want his veteran presence and his veteran leadership there for the team. But they can't. There's only so many receivers that you can carry into a game. You got other positions that you need depth, where you're going to have to address stuff. That where does that leave Cam Johnson? He's the returner. So who's going to be these scratches now? Is Tez going to be relegated to special teams duty because you can't carry Cam and you can't carry Shep on the game day roster anymore?
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting what they decide. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about different games coming up in the NFL this week and who you should be rooting for or against. But before we do that, Marcus, I have to throw this on you because we don't usually do Q&A on Tuesday, but this was such a good question. I had to get your thoughts on it. Someone asked, does NFL players, do they stay loyal to their childhood teams, or does it just become a job where teams feel like more like businesses?
No, man. Yeah, it's more like business. Like you root for who pays you. So like when I grew up, I mean, I was born in 76. So like my uncles were Steelers fans. Well, one of my uncles was a Steelers fan. The other one was a 72 Dolphins fan. And so I was a Steelers fan growing up all the way, even when I played at Michigan. But once I played for the Oakland Raiders, I didn't care about nobody's Steelers, brother. I don't care now. I mean, I like Mike Tomlin. My best friend Larry Foote played for the Steelers, but I don't care about the Steelers. So once you draw a check, that's who you cheer for. And then I started rooting for either guys that I coached when I was coaching college football or guys that I played with. So I was always a Tom Brady fan. I was always a Charles Woodson fan. So whoever those guys played for, that's who I cheered for. So there's no loyalty after when the check stops, the loyalty stops.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, coming up next, we're going to go around the NFL. Don't go anywhere.
The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories. Because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. Grandparents, parents, newlyweds, anyone who loves photos, endless uploads of pictures and 30-second videos through the Aura app. Add a personalized message right inside the frame so the gift feels thoughtful the moment it's opened. Packaging comes gift ready with no price tag, no wrapping needed. It's a huge win for those of us that not so great at the wrapping. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frame, named #1 by Wirecutter by using promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code LOCKEDON. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply.
Yeah, I can attest to not being a great rapper. My wife does not let me do any of the gift wrapping, that's for sure. But all right, let's go around the NFL. Obviously, a big week for the Bucs to get a win, but there's also several key games. Unless I missed it, I believe Carolina's off this week, and so that's obviously a thing for Tampa to kind of get a game ahead in the win column. The game that I'm kind of interested in, and it's weird because outside of Thanksgiving Day, I haven't really been interested in a lot of the Thursday night games, but I'm actually interested in the Dallas-Detroit game because Dallas is sneakily kind of catching fire here. Detroit, they had several players that didn't practice today even. Amon-Ra St. Brown even said he might not even be able to play in the game, and so that one's getting interesting because Detroit's starting to fall out of the playoff race.
Well, for me, I'll tell you right now, I'm looking at the Bears and the Packers. And remember, I asked you guys a month ago, when did the Bears get a team? They're out here making a lot of noise. They're all over social media. Guys are just, talking their talk and walking their walk. And the coach is taking off his shirt and all kind of stuff. So you have to understand that for me, like the Bears and the Packers, 9-3, 8-3, that's huge. And then I think in the AFC North, it has nothing to do with Tampa, the Steelers and the Ravens. I mean, 6-6, 6-6. I think that's a big game. It's a rivalry game. It's going to be interesting. The Colts, I think they kind of showed some vulnerability in the last month or so. So when the Colts take on the Jags and Trevor Lawrence, I mean, I like them at Clemson. I really would like to see the Jags pull that one off. Never really been a Colts kind of guy, but those for me are probably the three games that make the most sense. But I also think that the Bengals and the Bills can be something like just on the AFC side. Like I like the Bills; they are pretty good, but they're like they still can't stop the run and they don't tackle well, and it's like this is the time of year. Like once you get to December, James, it's like spoiler time. All right, and it's like teams are trying to separate themselves, and then there's some teams that are trying to make your life miserable. So I don't think the Broncos will have any problem with the Raiders, and I don't think the Rams, coming off that loss, I don't think they'll have any problems with the Cardinals. But the Texans and the Chiefs is a game that everybody's going to watch because the Texans are kind of like good but not good, and then the Chiefs, everybody wants to win. I mean, everybody either you root for them or you root against them now. They're like the new Patriots when Tom was with them. So I think there's some games on the schedule, like on the docket this week, that are going to make or break some playoff implication situations. But obviously, we're going to watch the Bucs when they play. But lastly, though, the Eagles and Chargers, 8-4, 8-4. I'm going to root for Jim Harbaugh to beat Jalen Hurts and those guys. They just can't. I think the Eagles got exposed. And what happens in the NFL sometimes is when one team figures you out, they'll tell the other team and they'll figure you out too. And then it gets a little contagious. And so I think the Eagles will be fine, obviously, as far as in their division, but I don't think they'll go like all the way like they did last year. And I think the Chargers, they're kind of hot and cold too. I'm a really big Jesse mentor kind of guy defensively, even though his dad helps him out, and you guys don't know that, but I just said it publicly. But even when he was at Michigan, but I want to see the Chargers beat the Eagles and just kind of keep them humble and keep them in their place.
Yeah, I'm real intrigued by that Monday night game as well, mostly because I have Justin Herbert in fantasy, and he's going to try to play with a surgically repaired hand. So a little nervous about that. I'll for sure have one eye on the Seahawks and Falcons game. The Falcons are one of those teams where their record does not indicate the talent that they have. They don't have Michael Penix, obviously. Don't know if Drake London is going to play this week or not, but what is the way that Atlanta attacks that game? Do they, since they're out of it, they're not going to win the division, and if they don't win the division, they're not going to make the playoffs. Do they just not care about this game because they're going to be focused on trying to upset the Bucs on Thursday? Or are they going to go out there with their hair on fire trying to win a game for their coach and try to put together a little something to give the fan base and the franchise some optimism heading into the offseason? How are they going to perform? You can say what you will about the way the Miami Dolphins have played this year and some of the games that they've lost. They absolutely have not quit on their head coach, who is a guy who's certainly on the chopping block, but they are still playing really hard for him each and every week. Are the Falcons going to do the same for Raheem Morris? So that's one that I'm really interested in. And then, the other ones that I was looking at, Indianapolis and Jacksonville. Of course, Indianapolis is kind of falling apart here after being the 1 seed for so long this season. And of course, Bucs fans who are frustrated with the way they were losing games and the way the offense has been performing, we should have fired Todd Bowles and promoted Liam Cohen. Look what he's doing in Jacksonville. How is that game going to go? And then, Marcus, you mentioned the other game that I'm really interested in. It's Cincinnati and Buffalo. That game might go like the over-under should be 99.5 because both of these defenses are just terrible. But somehow, some way, the Bengals are still in the playoff hunt. So are they going to make a run here with Pittsburgh and Baltimore beating each other up? The Bengals, I think they get Baltimore again next week, where they can really put themselves right back in the thick of this NFC North race and try to steal the division away from the Steelers and the Ravens, who started off so slowly. And then, of course, Chicago and Green Bay, that's going to have implications for the NFC playoffs. If the season ended right now, the Bucs are hosting the Seattle Seahawks, but could turn into the Bears. It could turn into the Packers. There are still some games to make sure that you're following along to see where these teams are starting to shift up and down, and who a potential postseason opponent could be for the Bucs.
Yeah, that Kansas City and Houston, I'm glad y'all brought up that one, because Kansas City, one more loss and they're done. I mean, they pretty much have to run the table to make the postseason. I mean, I guess weird things can happen and they can still get in. And they also can run the table and still got to get in, depending on how everything shakes out. But it's just been a weird year for Kansas City this year. I mean, they're not pulling out games like they used to. Even last Thursday when they played Dallas, it felt like they were going to pull out that game despite Dallas playing pretty well. It just felt like that was going to happen, and it didn't. Dallas ended up holding them off. As far as the best game of the week, I kind of agree with one of the games y'all mentioned in terms of the Bears and the Packers. And that's not a game that I would have really cared about if you asked me before the year, other than two historic franchises. But that's just how good the Bears are playing. I mean, right now and I believe they still are, number one in the NFC, which is just insane to think about. I mean, Ben Johnson's probably the runaway coach of the year, I would assume, with what he's done with the Bears this season. But that game should be a lot of fun. And other than that, there's, I guess if you want to watch Shadur Sanders and Cam Ward go at it, two not great teams, but two promising young quarterbacks, that one could be some fun if you want to see the future. And then Baltimore and Pittsburgh is always fun. I feel like hard-nosed football anytime you watch them.
And then I also think too, like, in a couple throwaway games, but like the Titans and the Browns, I'd like to see Shadur go crazy against the Titans defense that just can't stop a nosebleed from running. And then, like, just for his confidence and just for his situation in Cleveland, it's going to be an interesting game for me. And when you talk about Steelers and Ravens, like that's always a physical, cold AFC North battle. I'm a Lamar Jackson guy, but I'm a Mike Tomlin guy too. So, I'd like to see the Ravens win. I just think, John Harbaugh and those guys in the playoffs are just fun to watch, even though they underachieve a lot. But, when you look at the whole slate, you talk about the Bears and the Packers, the NFC North, like that's a big game. And the Bears on the road and they're red hot. I think this is an opportunity for the Packers to, find a way to get in the first place. So that game is going to be very, very interesting. But the Chiefs and the Texans, though, James, like I want the Chiefs to lose because I've never been an Andy Reid guy. I think Pat Mahomes is a great player, blah, blah, blah. But I'm tired of the Chiefs. Like, I'm just tired of them. I mean, like, I'm tired of looking at them, and I want them out of here. So I want them to lose that game for a lot of reasons. But at the same time, though, I just want Tampa Bay to just don't fall asleep. Because I know that's our team, that's what we're talking about. But if they lose and then they find a way to get behind Carolina, I'm just not sure they'll recover. I'm just not sure. Yeah. So to me, it's a must win for Tampa Bay. And they did it on defense the last time they played this team. But there's still some games out there that really have the type of implications, though, James, that can affect the seeding.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's crazy to think both the Bucs and the Panthers control their own destiny, right? The Bucs win the next 3 games, they win the division. Like, that's it. Mm-hmm. But if the Panthers win their games and they beat the Bucs twice, the division is Carolina's. Speaking of seeding, I found this to be interesting. I was playing with the little playoff machine here. So if the Lions, Buccaneers, Seahawks, and Rams all win, okay, and then the Packers beat the Bears, just looking at the NFC teams here, The Packers beat the Bears. The Bears go from the 1 seed down to the 7. And Green Bay jumps to the 2, and the Rams go to the number 1 seed. That's how important. I mean, that's a playoff game in and of itself. That's how important it is for Chicago to get a win in Lambeau, because they will go from a first-round bye to then, being slated to play at Lambeau in the first round of the playoffs. So absolutely wildly important game there between the Packers and the Bears. I love it. I love December football.
It is crazy how close the NFC is, and it's going to be a lot of fun here in the last few weeks of the season. All right, coming up next, we will give our final analysis and give our score prediction. We'll be right back in about 10 seconds. All right, Bucs Squad, like I said, one final segment. We do our final analysis and our score prediction. For me, I think you're finally going to see them finally play a full complementary football. I think the offense is going to play well. I think the defense overall is going to play well. I think they're going to win 27-13. I think they kind of jump out early in the game. They get off to a fast start, which hasn't really been the case in weeks past. And then the defense forces some turnovers. The offense takes care of the football. And we see the Bucs start to pull away and kind of run away with this one.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna go closer to like 30 to 13, 30 to 10 ish. I think the Bucs are gonna jump on the Saints, and I think they're gonna have an offensive explosion. I think with all the pieces back, with Chris back, Bucky back, when I watched that, when I watched the game again, and I really watched Bucky, there were 2 plays that stood out. One of them was the screen pass that he caught. I thought he looked explosive, and I thought that was something that if you have a good screen back situation offensively, it terrorizes a defense. And then the way the offensive line blocked on his touchdown run looked like some type of counter. It might have been a dart. Dart is where the tackle pulls, but tight end tackle pulls type stuff. I think Grizz is going to get into his bag. I really think he's going to give everybody something to think about. I think everybody's going to get their touches. Baker's going to be red hot. And I just think that the Bucs are going to be a 30-point, offensive, productive type team. And I think defensively they're going to come out and play, just because the Saints just aren't very good. I mean, obviously, they lost to Miami, and they scored 17 points, but at the same time they didn't score in the first half. They were down 16-0 at half. And what you see in the NFL is they start to give you points just to get the game over with. Like, if you're up 2 scores, they'll let you go down and score in the last 2-3 minutes just to get the ball back. Mm-hmm. So I just don't think the Saints are going to do anything offensively. I think Yaya, Vita, those guys, Winfield, and I also think this is a game to where Zion can get his confidence back a little bit. And then Dean is going to be out there doing what he does. So I just think this is a game that the Bucs are going to win, but I think they need to win big. I think they need to show up and show out.
Yeah, I agree completely. And one of the difference makers in this game is, the first time around, the Saints had 227 passing yards. 75 of them went to Rashid Shaheed. Rashid Shaheed's not there anymore. They're going to have Chris Olave, who's been, fantastic. Glad that he's staying healthy. Was starting to get concerned about his long-term health. And they have Juwan Johnson. They have Devon Vale. This is a offense. Probably no Alvin Kamara. This is an offense you should be able to shut down pretty well. As long as you're keeping contained, as long as you're not, missing your assignments and giving up 40, 50, 60-yard explosive touchdowns, this is a game where you should not allow the Saints to score more than 1 or 2 field goals, just like the first time around. But as far as the offense for the Bucs is concerned, you go back 152 passing yards by Baker Mayfield, and I look at Emeka Egbuka's numbers from this game. 3 receptions on 9 targets. this was, again, I said it at the top of the show, this was kind of the beginning of the downslope for Baker Mayfield, where he was missing open guys. He was sailing passes. His timing was off. I think this is an opportunity for him with Chris Godwin getting back to being Chris Godwin, with Ibuka still being Ibuka, with Tez playing the way that he has been. He was their leading receiver in the first matchup with only 43 yards, no passing touchdowns in this one. It was Sean Tucker and the defense that got into the end zone. This is a game where Baker should be able to take advantage of a weak New Orleans secondary. He's looked better the last couple of weeks, still missing a couple of passes that he normally makes, but it's getting better. The receivers just have to freaking hold on to the ball when it hits them square in the hands so that you're extending drives or you're scoring touchdowns. So I expect a much bigger offensive output for the Bucs this time around, especially at home. Now, the caveat to all of that is they're expecting heavy rain on Sunday. That could change everything drastically. That could turn into a Bucky Rashad Tucker kind of game plan instead of Baker airing it out as much as he probably should if those weren't the conditions.
Yeah, and I'm predicting a 14-point win, but with Marcus, I want to see a dominant win in this one, because this isn't like the Cardinals don't have a good record, but we went through it. They played a ton of close games this year. They even said on the broadcast they had 7 games that were decided by 4 points or less. Now, they lost all 7 of those. But if you just look at their record, you think they're this terrible team that gets blown out a lot, and that's not the case for the Cardinals. As for the Saints, they've only played in 4 games decided by 1 score. They lost all 4 of those games, but by 1 score, and that's only, like I said, 4 games. And so this isn't like the Cardinals where the Saints are constantly playing people close and just coming up short. They're getting beaten. They're getting beat handedly in almost all of their games this year. And, they made the quarterback change in that Bucs game and have gone with that. Tyler Shuck, replaced Spencer Rattler. And if you look at his numbers, they're not even better than what Rattler was doing beforehand. And then you mentioned Rashid Shaheed is no longer on the team either. And he was probably their best receiver. He definitely was against the Bucs that day. And so it's just, obviously the weather can play a factor in this, but it feels like if it's not a blowout, it's probably a red flag of some kind.
Yeah, and when you look at the last game between these two teams, neither team ran the ball very well. The Bucs had 88 yards rushing, and New Orleans had 48 yards rushing. Tez Johnson was the leading receiver with 5 catches and 43 yards. He had 6 targets, and so I just think that Otten is a guy that needs to still be in the mix. When we talk about all these pieces coming back into play, I think Cade is a guy that can hurt you. Really in a similar form of a McBride. I don't think he's as good as McBride, obviously, but I think that his role can be like the guy you just don't leave open in a pickup game. And so I want to see Baker become the point guard that he's known to be with all of these weapons. I want to see the distribution of the football to all of these guys, whether it's Chris or Tez or whoever's out there. I want to see him dial it up, make the throws. And listen, man, a lot of people question NFL salaries, right? They always say, oh, these guys get paid too much. But if you watch some of the throws that Baker made, even the one Chris dropped, the way he threaded that needle, that was a spectacular throw. And you just can't pick a guy that's stocking boxes at Walmart that can make that throw. And so it's really hard to put a number on these guys' talent. I played in that league, and I always feel like they don't get paid enough. So I just think that this is a game to where the Bucs can make a statement. And you want to put 2 games in a row. You want to get back on some type of streak. So you lost 3 coming off the bye. But if you can, start to polish up a few things, and the Saints is the perfect team, whether you're playing the Saints or the Titans or the Browns, whoever, go ahead and do what you're supposed to do. But get all your guys the ball. Make that offense look like it's supposed to look. Defensively, they need to tackle better. They still need to tackle better. And I I think they need to get off the field a lot sooner just to get the offense more opportunities. Because I think Brissett, he's one of those guys that he's not a great quarterback, but he's okay. But he was dialing them up though. Like when you watch that first drive and you start looking at first down, slant, first down, quick game, it's like, all right. No turnover. The Bucs could have been down 7-0 and that game could have went the other way. It's just that simple. And I don't want to see the Saints get hot, see something on film, find a mouse in the house, and that's the guy that you pick on. Don't let the Saints figure out a way to dial you up and not turn it over and score early. And then that way, because that happens, then the Saints, could be in control of this football game in a very uncomfortable kind of way.
Yeah, and I know I don't give my score predictions on this show. I save that for my Friday show. But I will say, as Marcus, as you were talking about Cade Otton, the Saints and the Falcons are tied for the teams that Cade Otton has the most touchdowns against in his career. And he was 6 inches away from getting another one in this first Saints game. In fact, it cost some guy $1 million win on a parlay because that was the only leg that he missed. So Otton is a guy that has had some big time success against the Saints. And the other thing that I'll mention is if Cade Otton were to come up 6 inches short of the goal line in this one, I don't think the Bucs are going to have a problem scoring from the 1 this time around like they did the first time. They had, what was it? It was like 8 chances to score from the 1 on 2 different possessions, and it took them until that 4th down. I think that was the Sean Tucker touchdown. So yeah, it was a bad offensive performance. I think they're going to bounce back in this one, and Cade Otton and Bucky Irving will be 2 of the big reasons why, but I'm more confident in what Baker's going to be able to do than I have been over the course of the majority of the last month and a half.
Yeah, which is crazy because when he had that shoulder injury, we all were like, okay, don't play against the Cardinals. It could be even more severe than that. And but I thought he looked actually pretty sharp against the Cardinals. Again, the numbers aren't going to show how well I thought he actually played in that game. He almost looked juiced up for that one. And maybe it was because of the injury and things that had happened during the week. But yeah, I just want to see a clean performance from both sides of the football. Play strong defense, force some turnovers. Because again, the Saints have only not turned it over twice this year. So force turnovers and offensively just be more efficient than you have been. I mean, they haven't been near the 3rd down conversion team offense that they have been in the years past. And so I would like to see them obviously not getting many 3rd downs, but when they do convert those 3rd downs and put up a big game and for Baker and the whole offense, but specifically Baker, kind of get back to that MVP form that he was playing at.
Yeah, when you talk about 3rd downs, the last time they played, the Bucs were 3 of 13. That's pretty pathetic on 3rd down, and the defense really saved them. And that was the game that you had a couple of questionable defensive touchdowns that got called back. So. With Antoine Winfield Jr. So I expect him to have a breakout game. But I just want to see the offensive line shore it up a little bit more. They obviously had a couple of breakdowns in this last game. Rachaad White didn't protect very well when he was asked to block on the 1 sack. That was on Baker. But I think that if they can run the ball for about 200 yards, you don't want Baker to have to do too much in a game like this, and you don't want him to use his legs and take unnecessary shots. So what you want to do in this game is run the football, and I think you use all 3 backs. You don't want to run Bucky in the ground, but you want to get him the touches that he needs to get in playoff form, and then you want Rashad and Sean to really step up and fill in, and then you play action pass and go over the top. Use Cade a little bit more. Get Godwin his touches, and then get Emeka his touches, and I think the Bucs run away with it.
Yeah. Hopefully that's what happens in this one. And again, the weather could factor in, and as James mentioned with the rain. And hey, if it does that, then you better run for over 200 yards in a game like that, and don't make Baker have to be Superman. But yeah, that'll do it for this episode of the Bucs Squad. We will be back to recap the Saints game. We're planning kind of 4:35 Eastern time, just like we did this past one, shortly after the game ends, and then James will obviously do his live later on that night. So you'll get 2 recaps of the game. So make sure to check that out, and make sure to keep watching James every single day as he brings great content to the channel. And until next time, fire the cannons.